All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. We are talking about the role of the assistant coach and leadership development. I think our theory, this module is situational leadership, which I have paired intentionally with the assistant coach because I think assistant coaches have to adjust a whole bunch. And maybe we'll hear some more about that. But very excited to have Paige Love and Keith Anderson here with us today from Texas State. I'm going to let y'all introduce yourself and then we'll kind of get into a little Q&A.
Keith, you want to go first?
Sure. So my name is Keith Anderson. I am currently the associate head coach for volleyball here at Texas State. I'm originally from the Chicago area. I've kind of ping-ponged back and forth between Illinois and Texas. I was born up north, then moved to Texas in fourth grade, then moved back up north in the middle of my junior year of high school, which is where I kind of got into volleyball. And then I went back to Texas for college, graduated from Texas A&M. I played on the men's volleyball team there, was a practice player for the women's team, and then went to Rice University as a volunteer. I was there for one season and then went to UT Arlington in Arlington, Texas for 2 seasons. And then from there, I was at the University of Delaware for 3 years. And now I'm starting, in the middle of my 3rd season here at Texas State. So, yeah, I've kind of been, a few different places. I've had some very different experiences at each place that I've been, but very, very fortunate to be at Texas State right now. Our program has a very rich tradition of winning. I think out of the last 11 seasons, I think only 2 we weren't playing for a conference championship. So it's a pretty high caliber program. It's been a lot of fun these 3 years that I've been here. And Texas State is a pretty great place, which I'm sure Paige can attest to as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. And Keith does a great job. He worked his schedule around so that he could spend some time with you guys today and worked around with some film sessions. So I know that they're getting ready for JMU. But I'm Paige Love. I'm one of the assistants for women's basketball. I was a college player at UNC Asheville in North Carolina. That's where I'm originally from a small town in between Winston-Salem and Boone called Wilkesboro, North Carolina. We are bringing back the North Wilkesboro Speedway for anyone that is NASCAR fans in my hometown, which is a big thing for us. I went on to play at UNC Asheville. My first year as a freshman, we were like 2-26. My senior year, we were 26-6. We won the regular season and we won the conference tournament championship. And that was an extreme highlight, seeing your name called for March Madness for NCAA tournament bid. That was amazing. So winning that championship was really special at Asheville. I went on to be a graduate assistant at Texas State, where I currently am under the same head coach, Coach Zenere Antoine. She's been here for 12 seasons. She's an incredible leader because she is a mom in coaching, and her husband also is a football coach, and he has been at various levels, high school and college. They have been married over 23 years, and they have been apart for 17 of those. So they are finally being able to live in the same household and raise their boys. They have 3 younger kids. So as you guys know, being a coach, you are away from your family a lot. So I think it's really special to see what she does as a head coach, as a mom, as a wife, as a daughter, and just all that she does for our program. But I was a graduate assistant here for 2 seasons. I got bumped up to be an assistant coach for 2 seasons. And then I had a really great opportunity to go back and coach at my alma mater at UNC Asheville for 2 years. The pandemic happened. It was a little bit crazy. I learned a lot under head coach Honey Brown. She was my position coach in college. So it was really cool to go back and coach at my alma mater and be there. And it's a little bit different when you're at your alma mater because you have a little bit more pride and you're more invested. People know you on a little bit different level. So that was really cool. Life called me back to Texas State. I was able to be closer to my partner. We have been doing distance for 3 years. So it's really cool that now we're able to live in the same household as well. So I'm now back at Texas State, got back in April. So this is my 5th season as an assistant coach. And the reason why I do this is for the student athletes and for the players. I'm really all about empowering females. I think it's great that we are able to do this through sport, but even cooler is that we get to mold them into better women when they graduate. And that is my why. I love basketball, but it's more importantly about making sure that they're better women at the end of the day.
And also, fun fact about Paige is she was also featured in ESPN Top 10 for hitting a buzzer beater game winner. Was it half court, 3/4 court? Like what?
Yeah, a little bit behind half court. They took it down from YouTube, or I would make sure Dr. Majette showed you guys. But yeah, it was pretty cool. It was that my head coaches at Asheville, it was her first Division I win, was a buzzer beater versus Furman to win the game that was on ESPN Top 10. So
Down go the Paladins. Fantastic.
yeah, it was cool. It was cool.
As a Davidson grad, Furman, never. So, all right. Thanks guys for being here. Appreciate that. So, love hearing everybody's different path. Paige, yours back and forth. Keith, you seem to find your way to Texas and you kind of seem to like it too. So, good for you. So, could y'all share a little bit about, just describe to us, this is a leadership class. So it's a leadership degree, but this specific course is in leadership development. And one of the assignments that the students are going to have later on is to develop their own personal leadership philosophy. So I always like to ask our guests, how would you describe your leadership style, your approach, and how have you seen that evolve or develop, as you've kind of gotten further into your career?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. For me, I feel like, my leadership style is very eclectic, in the sense that, it kind of changes year to year, month to month, week to week, day to day, even, based on a lot of factors. Generationally, it could be something that is specific to a group of kids. So like this year's team that I'm coaching is significantly different than last year's team that I'm coaching. So I'm always trying to figure out how I can meet them and get them to meet me in a place where we can all accomplish whatever goals we set together as a unit. And so I'm big on relationships. That's really huge to me. Communication is always at the forefront of my leadership style. And then making sure that I'm able to hold them accountable, because I feel like that's a really big piece of being a leader. And, yes, we're going to have bad days and, things are going to be off. You guys are going to be dealing with things in your life. But whenever you step into the gym, can you uphold that minimal standard of effort and attitude and respect? Because if you can't, then we need to give you the resources to be able to handle your business and then come back to make sure that we're maintaining that standard. So it's a lot. Like leadership is evolving. It's not something that is, it can be consistent, but for me as an assistant coach where I'm at, it changes pretty often, a lot more often than you would think. But for me, I always lead with relationships and communication, and then making sure that I'm able to hold my athletes accountable. And with that, making sure that I have empathy for them as people as well.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what Keith said. And part of the reason why, when Dr. Majette asked me to be on this call, the first person I thought of was Keith in another sport. He does a really great job because I think he embodies some of the same leadership styles that I feel like I have as an assistant. Big on relationships. I think if you don't have a relationship with your players, then it's really hard for you to coach them and hold them accountable, because if they don't know that you come from a place of care. So one of my biggest things is we've got to build our relationship foundation, but then instead of tough love, I reverse that to love tough, because I think you have to love on them with this generation before you can be really hard on them. So I think early in my career, I was afraid to be hard on them because of their relationship. And I think now, evolving into my assistant coach, going into my 5th season, that's the only way that you're going to get results, is if you're hard on them. Imagine a parent. I think that coaches are a lot like parents. You have got to be hard on them and instill them discipline, hold them accountable. You have to love on them. You have to be there to pick them up. You have to allow them to fail, but then you have to be the first one to reach your hand down and make sure that they get back up again. But relationships, loving tough. The last thing is servant leadership. That's huge for me. And we have a really veteran team. We have 6 COVID seniors. So that means that they are about to go into the real world next year. That's a lot of experience. And so getting them to buy into that. So for example, one of our managers, has a towel. We fall on the floor, sweaty. The manager goes over and wipes up the towel. Everyone's thanking that manager. Hey, thank you so much. So the team has come up with this thing where whenever that happens, they say, we love a servant leader. So whenever we notice it, we start calling it out. And I think that the more, especially with this generation, that you can applaud them when they do things that are supposed to be natural. It's not natural for them to get outside their comfort zone. So they've really bought into, we love a servant leader. So we really applaud people when they do that, whether that's managers, coaches, players, picking up other people's trash. That's what we want to be about, because that's something that's really important to me at my core. I want to be a great example for them. I want to show them how to be a strong female. I want to show them how to be a servant. I want to show them how to put others before ourselves, because I think that at the end of the day, that's going to take you further in life, and that'll result in wins. Sometimes it may not happen on the basketball court, but it'll result in wins in life.
Thanks for that. Yeah, we spent a good amount of time talking about servant leadership, and a couple of these students are probably in groups that's their theory that they're going to be using to develop a workshop for like an athletic department or a team. Like, what can we take from servant leadership and why does that need to be applied in college athletics? So thanks for bringing that up. Y'all have been assistant coaches in different places. And so since this is the module about assistant coaches, what would you say, how would you describe the role of an assistant coach? And I imagine we're probably going to get into parts of like how that then depends on who your head coach is. And then y'all have worked at different spots and you played for different people, right? So maybe tying in some of that if you want to, but like what would you say the role of an assistant coach is for a program or staff?
I can take it first, Keith, since you've been taking it.
Go for it.
I think it's pretty cut and dry, regardless of where you're at. Is the one thing is you've got to make sure the student athletes are taken care of. So that's your main priority. The second thing is to support the head coach and whatever they may need to help the program run smoothly, function correctly. Make sure that we're supporting each other, because at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. So, even though we all have different responsibilities, it's our responsibility to make sure our job gets done. I think I've mentioned it before, but to be positive role models for our athletes, because at the end of the day, they're looking towards us. So even though you may not think that they are watching you, how you, how you respond to adversity, how you handle yourself, what you post on social media, how you interact in times of conflict and stress, that they're taking note on all of that on a daily basis. I think that the last couple of things I'll touch on is just, for me, all you can do is be your best self. There's going to be days where you don't feel like it, similar to our athletes, but making sure that you're just trying to give your best effort every day. We try to be great ambassadors for Texas State athletics, because, we need to support volleyball. Volleyball supports us. We're all a big family here. And then knowing that what head coach you work for and how you can best support them, because every person is going to be different. And you have to know, similar to how we ask our athletes to know their personnel and know who their teammates are, you have to know your head coach, you have to know your staff members to know how to effectively work for them and to create just a positive atmosphere for us all to work in, because that's one of the adjustments that I think new assistants have is how can I best manage and work with the people around me? And that just comes with time and just asking questions and being okay with making a mistake. Us all are, we want to be really, really great, but in order to learn, you got to be able to make mistakes. And that's just part of it.
Yeah, I'll kind of echo a lot of what Paige just said. First and foremost, supporting the head coach is a really big piece of it. And then the other half is managing relationships to make sure that everything runs smoothly, that things don't fall through the cracks. I want to make sure that my head coach feels supported in the sense that he doesn't have to worry about all these other little things. As a head coach, they have to worry about so much. There's so much on their plate. They're the face of the program. There's a lot going on, but there's also a lot going on behind the scenes that not everyone sees. And so I want to make sure that I'm managing that. And so from my perspective, that looks like making sure that our staff is all on the same page and doing their job, from the other assistants to our volunteer, our graduate assistant, our student managers, making sure that everyone knows what their responsibilities are and that they're doing them, and then more. And then it goes down to, managing relationships outside of the staff. So with facilities, academics, our sports medicine people, anybody that we kind of deal with on a regular basis, making sure that we're all up to date and everyone's on the same page. And then lastly, of course, our student athletes, making sure that they're all, in good shape. And the thing with being a good assistant to your head coach is, it's not always about being a yes man or a yes woman. You have to challenge them sometimes. There's different ways to support, not the best way to say this, there's times when you will have different feelings about something with your head coach, and you having a conversation about that is a way of showing support, because you're not thinking of it from just your perspective. It's your perspective about the program. And so I feel like as an assistant, we have a really unique opportunity to have a big impact on the program, by making sure that we maintain those relationships with our head coach, the rest of our staff, the other people that we interact with on a daily basis, and then managing our student athletes as well.
That's a great point about your head coach. And Paige, I can totally relate to like when you're just starting out, like maybe y'all could share something a little bit, like any memories that you have of when you were trying to establish yourself as an assistant coach, that first year of things that you wish you'd done differently. Because I do think that that's a very tricky transition, especially if you're just done playing, you're very close in age to the athletes, and so do y'all have any stories about like that first year, that establishment in your role? I know that was not in my email, so.
I mean, I've made plenty of mistakes, so I can share on a couple. So I think that when the head coach I currently work for, just being very prepared and thinking about thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead, because that's how she operates. She operates 3 or 4 steps ahead. So I had to retrain my mind to think like she was going to think. So, for example, thinking ahead of what questions she could possibly ask so that I hopefully would have an answer for her. There's so many different routes I could run with that, but trying to be 3 or 4 steps ahead, if that is your leadership, if that's whoever's in charge thinks like that. So, I don't know was not a good answer that she didn't want to hear. I needed to at least have something that gave her substance, that I knew what I was talking about, or that I could find out quickly the answer. The previous head coach that I worked for, she wanted to be in the know of everything. I needed to let her know as soon as it happened, what was going on. She wanted to be in the know. And that was different than the head coach I work for now. She's okay with letting us manage things behind the scenes, and that the less that she knows, the better sometimes, to, help her operate help the program run smoothly. And then the last thing I will say is I made a mistake early in my career. When you recruit someone, you spend so much time recruiting that person, it starts becoming my recruit, when at the end of the day, it's not your recruit. That was a selfish thing that I was doing, that if I worked really hard, oh yeah, that's my recruit, I got that kid here. No, I didn't offer her a scholarship. This is not my university. This is not my program. So I had to really retrain my mind of, no, I worked really hard to build a relationship with the kid. And at the end of the day, it's our recruit. She's joining our family. So those are just 3 mistakes that I would say that I made, that depending on what head coach you work for, could go a different way. So.
And that's a fine line to walk, right? Because, if you are aspiring to move up the ranks in college coaching, being a good recruiter and being known as one is what's going to get you some attention for those bigger opportunities. But I do think that, I can just speak from women's basketball. I do think that what was once recruiting coordinator and, then down the line is much more of a collective staff effort now. So
Right.
I can see what you're saying with that for sure. I think people also want really good team players on their
Right.
staffs. So
Yeah, one of the things for me early on in my career, so the first two head coaches that I worked for had been around for a while. The first, when I volunteered, Jenny Volpe at Rice, she had been there for like 10 seasons and a head coach a couple other places. And then my first full-time job at UTA, she had been there for like 20 something years. And so I remember that first like couple of weeks I started at UTA, and my head coach, she had been around for a long time. You know, she hired me because she thought I was confident and this and that. And so I walked into the gym and I'm thinking like, okay, well, I don't want to step on any toes or like rub anyone the wrong way. And she was like really upset with me after that first practice. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I don't really understand. And her big thing was she wanted me to take ownership of who I was going to be as a coach and how I was going to show up every day. And she felt like I didn't do a good job of that on day one. And so we ended up having a conversation about it. And for me, it was just hard because I'd never been in that role before. And so I was trying to figure out and manage what that looked like. And she was like shoving me in without any expectation kind of. And so I learned throughout those 2 years that I was there that, you know, I need to have a voice and make sure that, you know, I'm taking ownership of what I want my career to look like and what I want to be, and not be so overly concerned about, you know, the thoughts of other people. And so looking back on it, it's really kind of funny because in the moment I felt pretty confident, but looking back, I'm like, I had almost no confidence, like whenever I first started my career. And it's just something that you learn and you figure out. You know, if I could give you guys any advice, it would be to take ownership of what you want to be as a coach, whether that's an assistant, head coach, whatever it is, and try to implement that from day one.
all right, who has questions? We have carried us through the first 25 minutes, so let's go. Let me see some hands, please. All right, AJ. Then Maurice.
All right, my first question is for Paige. Well, my question is for Paige. Going back to servant leadership, how do you get people to buy in, players, managers, and staff alike, buy into servant leadership? And then when they don't buy in, how do you handle that, or how do you adjust to it?
Yeah, I think that it starts a lot with, you know, showing them. And I'm big on, you have to teach them the why behind the what. So for example, you know, we ask players to communicate. Okay, well, what does that look like? How do you do it? What's nonverbal, verbal communication? So teaching them, because they're not going to just, some are going to be natural, just doing it. Like that's just going to be who they are at their core. And then some people you're going to teach. So for us, I think it comes down from, you know, our whole staff tries to embody servant leadership. And so back to them watching us. So they watch us do it. You know, they see our managers, they see our support staff, they see everyone trying to embody those characteristics. And goes back to when someone does it, we hype them up and we celebrate it, because again, they're going to latch on to things that you celebrate. They're going to be what you preach. So if you don't preach it, you don't own it, you don't talk about it all the time, you don't celebrate it, you don't hold them accountable for it, then they're not going to do it. It's just going to be words on the wall. So if you've ever seen like, you know, don't put a word on the wall or don't put something in your handbook if you're not going to uphold it, because again, it's just words. So I think that actions speak louder than words. And then if I see an opportunity where someone is not being a servant leader, or they miss an opportunity, I have a one-on-one conversation with them. I think for our team, they do a lot better with one-on-one conversations immediately or within, you know, a couple hours. So it's fresh on their mind and immediately talk to them about it. But one-on-one, I think calling them out in front of a large group necessarily does not work well for them in this scenario. But if I see an opportunity missed, having a conversation, hey, Keith, this is what I saw. Is this what you meant? And this is how we can improve. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was a great answer for my question. Thank you.
And
I'll take a great answer. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So AJ is a GA for men's basketball. So guys, feel free to introduce, yourselves as you're asking questions. And I would say too, AJ, so like in some of the teams that I work with, coaches come to me and say, our team's just really negative, or our team's just really petty when they talk about each other. And my question is like, well, what do your staff meetings sound like? Right. Because like if your staff's in a habit, and obviously staff need spaces to vent and have, confidential conversations, but also know that whatever your staff meeting sounds like, the tone, the overall attitude, that probably carries over to on the court or on the field or in the weight room. And players also pick up on that. Right. So like if you're like the servant stuff, yes, messaging on the wall, but like they also pick up on the nonverbal things. They also pick up on the side conversations. Like, people read people. And so I would just kind of add that to Paige's point about how do you create buy-in and extend that messaging of servant mindset. All right, go ahead, Maurice, and then we'll go to Sierra.
Good afternoon. My name is Maurice Williams. I work in communications here at Clemson also. My question is for both or either of you. Obviously, one thing about leadership we know is like being a good follower is very important. And both of you work for different head coaches. Can you kind of talk about an incident, if it's happened? This might sound like a job interview. Can you tell me about a time when you may or may not agree with the head coach or a decision that they've made? Kind of like, how did you handle that? What did that look like? And how did you become better after that situation?
Yeah, I can go. I'll give kind of our most recent kind of disagreement. And it's something that seems, not necessarily related to the sport, but we had 6 kids that we're kind of highlighting for our like marketing poster and some cards and things like that. And the 6 kids that we had, there wasn't a ton of diversity. And that's something that's really important to me. And I feel like our program in general, and I feel like that's something that he kind of just missed in that moment. And so it's like, hey, just letting you know, like, I feel like maybe we should sub this kid with this one or whatever, just so we can, make sure that we're touching on the diversity piece of our team, because it is very important to us. And in the moment, I don't think he enjoyed that response. It was like him being challenged, and it is what it is. I will say me and my head coach are very close. And so it's hard too, because we're friends personally, but then also we work together. So like drawing that boundary sometimes makes it, it adds another barrier to our work relationship. And so, I said what I needed to say. I gave him a few moments, and then, came back later on that afternoon, and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to switch these 2 kids. Like, that was a really good point that you made. Like, sorry that I reacted that way initially. And for him, I think it was because, he's a white gay male with a black son. And so he's always trying to make sure that he covers that diversity piece. And I feel like his reaction was because he missed it, not necessarily because he was upset with what I was trying to say. And so those conversations are hard, but I think they need to be had. The more often that you have them, I feel personally, the easier it is to have them moving forward.
I'll just echo on that. I think it goes back to loyalty, like whatever, at the end of the day, it's not your program. So whatever the head coach goes with, you have to go with it, even if you don't agree with it in the moment. And your body language and how you respond, the players will be watching. And so even if you do not agree in the moment, whatever they say, you're going with it full force. And then you could have a conversation, similar to how Keith did with his head coach after, and say, hey, I didn't agree with what, this is my opinion, can we talk about this? But you got to have your head coach's back no matter what. Like, even if he didn't change it out, I mean, in my opinion, Keith would have had to have his back, but then bring the example to his head coach after and say, this was my perspective, is what I felt. I'm going to have your back no matter what, because we're asking our players to do the same. And if I have a closed door meeting with a player, my head coach has got to trust that I'm saying exactly what she would say to them, or that I'm not throwing her under the bus, because that can't happen at all, because then you just destroy the foundation of your program.
Paige, also, can you tell Jerica Jenkins that Maury Swim said hello?
I will. J Money. I'll tell J Money. How do you know her?
I was her SID when she was at Hampton.
Oh, J Money was a bucket.
She was all right.
Yeah, she's just an All-American. I'll tell her. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sierra. I need more hands, y'all.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Sierra. I'm the graduate assistant coach here at Clemson for the women's rowing team. And my question could be for either of you. What was your biggest challenge transitioning from a GA to an assistant coach?
I think mine was finding my voice. It was really good for me. It was really a great career move when I was a graduate assistant here at Texas State, and then moving to an assistant coach. But I think that the players still kind of viewed me as a GA, because that's what they know me for 2 years. So when I had an opportunity to go back to Asheville, I got more responsibilities. I had a different role. I think I really, truly found my voice. And now coming back, it's amazing. I think that it was much needed in my career to go on to a different place, find my voice, get around a different type of coach, have more responsibilities. So that was my biggest adjustment, is finding my voice. And because the players still, some of them view me as a GA, because that's what they know me for. And I don't fault them for that at all. Because that's also just my personality. I'm just going to continue to be who I am. And it was a great career move for me just to go on and find my voice in a louder, more direct way, going back to more of the love tough when I moved to Asheville, and now when I come back, because I didn't want to come back as the same person that left. And the girls told me that. They were wondering if I was going to come back and be the same coach, but I'm different now in a more positive way.
Yeah, same thing. Finding your voice was the toughest hurdle for me. It did take me about 2 to 3 years to kind of figure out what that looks like. But part of the building process of that for me was figuring out what was important, what were my priorities, how did I want to show up every day, how did I want to be as a coach, what did my values look like, and that kind of takes time. So, if you get into a situation where you are in a position as an assistant, don't apply too much pressure on you finding your voice, because it will happen over time. But I will say you should put some priority into figuring out, what your values and what your character looks like as a coach.
All right, we got Allie, then Reedy, then Willie, in that order, and then Riley. So we got 4 in a row.
All right. Hi, my name's Allie. I'm a 5th year on the softball team here at Clemson. Paige, this is directed to you, but Coach Anderson, you can obviously chime in too. You just talked about how female empowerment is so big for you and your coaching philosophy. So how do you implement that on the court, but also off the court?
I'm really big on meditations. There's a great app out there. It's called Doso, DOSO. And you can download it. I think it's a small subscription fee, but anybody that's in athletics, I think that doing these are just phenomenal, because we have to train our mind more than we train our physical. We also are doing this new app called Habit Share. Habit Share is awesome. Look it up. You can track your habits, but I think that that's another way for them to continue to be their whole person and not just focused on basketball. So we asked them to do 3 non-basketball, 3 basketball. And if you need any of these, I can send it to Dr. Majette. And then the last thing that we do, I think, to empower empower our athletes is we do this thing called Bobcat Families. It's really great. I got the idea from Asheville. So we have 3 or 4 student athletes with an assistant coach. We are all non-basketball. So it's not at the arena. It's all non-basketball. So within my family, we've done homemade pizza nights. We listened to a podcast and talked about it. I taught them how to write a handwritten note. And I know that sounds simple, y'all, but they didn't even know how to address an envelope and where to get a stamp. Yes, Dr. Majette?
I'm writing a book that's coming out in December, and one of my entries in the book is how to write a thank you note and where to put the stamp, because I have
Right.
also learned that. So thank you.
Can I get a signed copy, please?
Okay, we'll talk later.
But we did handwritten notes the other day, and they did not know how to address the envelope. They messed up a bunch of them. They did not know where to get stamps. We went to the driving range, so I taught them how to swing a golf club, which I know that sounds simple, but like, again, like it's just so much more than basketball. And I think that's how you empower them. I think having positive self-talk, I think, we don't talk about body image, but if you just continue to, be who you are and just love on them for who they are. You talk about healthy relationships. We bring in people to talk about healthy relationships. We have our nutritionists to talk about healthy eating behaviors. They see staff members have healthy relationships with their family. So, I mean, there's just so many things that you can do, but I'm really big on like mental, like, what are you saying to yourself? Talk to yourself instead of listen to yourself. We all can do better about that. If we listen to ourselves, just think about it, it's just all negative. But if we talk to ourselves, hopefully we're saying more positive things. But definitely take Bobcat families or little mini families wherever you go. Like, we've already seen so many great things from it because we paired people up that may not hang out outside of basketball practice. So you are low-key forcing them to hang out, but then again, you're building those relationships that they wouldn't have done on their own. So I made a little like PDF. I could share this with you. You guys can't see my screen, but I put on the back some ideas that you can do. So for example, like, teach them how to garden, take them to a library, like the local library, you can get a free library card. I just got It Takes What It Takes, which that book is like $50 on Amazon. So I just rented it for free. Like, I don't think people know about the San Marcos or the library in your local city. How to write an email to professor, administration, cooking demos, how to change a tire, how to change a car battery. So there's so many things. I can definitely share this with you guys, but those are just some things that I think we do to empower our student athletes. So I hope that answers your question.
Hi, I'm Reedy. This question is for either of you. I'm also on the softball team here at Clemson, but in this class, we talk a lot about like characteristics of a leader and a follower, but as an assistant coach, you guys are in a role that is both a leader and a follower. So I was wondering what you guys think the most important character traits someone that is an assistant coach needs to do their best work.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot being an assistant, having to go back and forth between the two, but I think being able to be supportive of both your student athletes and your head coach, vice versa, is a really important characteristic. Kind of like Paige talked about earlier, like regardless of whether you and your head coach are disagreeing, making sure that when you go out there in front of your athletes, you're on the same page, and then behind closed doors, you guys can have those conversations. And then same thing, with your student athletes, when you're leading, being supportive of them and their process, I think is really important. A lot of the athletes nowadays need to know why, they need more reasoning. They just require a lot more because they challenge a lot more. Whenever I was growing up, I did whatever I was told. That's how I was raised. Like, if a coach said to do this, I was doing it. Whether or not I understood it, I was doing it. And so now kids, or our athletes, are challenging a little bit more. And so being able to support them in the sense of they're trying to learn and understand, I feel like is a really important piece. So for me, it would be being able to be supportive.
I forgot one thing about Bobcat families. We name our family, and I think that's really cool. So to add that to that. And then for me, it's really hard to be a follower. Like I've had to learn to like step back, and like sometimes you don't always have to be in control. Sometimes you don't always have to be the loudest. Sometimes it's great to just sit back and watch, and then, you know, when you lead when you can, and then make sure that in order to be a great follower, sometimes is just sitting back, trusting the other person has it, and then just let it go. Like that's one thing that I've had to learn, is that you don't always have to be leading from the front. It's okay to be a follower. And especially when we do like team building activities, we just did a camping retreat, and like we did a low ropes course. And so as much as I wanted to intervene and like help them in those moments, like I needed to sit back and remember a player-led team is better than a coach-led team. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I felt like I needed to say that it's been a process for me to become a better follower.
So Adam Grant is very much worth a follow on social media, Instagram, Twitter. He's a Harvard business professor, and he's just written a ton of books and does a lot of stuff around organizational leadership. And he posted something today, Paige, that when you said that, it made me think of, he said, the true leader in a group is rarely the person who talks the most. I do think that we oftentimes confuse leadership with being loud and loudness with being leadership. And that can be the case. It's not always the case, but we confuse it as the case a lot of times. So it's usually the person who listens best. Listening is more than hearing what's said. It's noticing and surfacing what isn't said. Inviting dissenting views and amplifying quiet voices are acts of leadership. So I thought that was really good based on what you had just shared with us. So I don't know where we are in the order, but I do know Riley is last in this list. And after Riley, Sheridan, and then AJ.
Hi, my name is Willie Weiss. I'm a grad transfer from University of Michigan. And I was curious about recruiting and how you balance a player's character and if they're a good fit for the team over just their talent level.
I can run with this, just a brief, like you have to make a lot of calls. Like you should call people that are not really in their circle to ask about them. You know, like if someone called someone in the, you know, in the opposing district, or a non-conference opponent, or, you know, call their trainer that, you know, really doesn't have, they just see them on a maybe 1 or 2 times a week basis, you know, call all the people and ask the hard question, you know, and really try to build a great relationship with whoever's in their circle, and to be able to tell you really about the kid. I think if you notice a red flag, it's probably for real. Like there's been rare a time where I haven't noticed the red flag, or I have, and it hasn't came out to be true. But I think the more research that you can do, the better, and try to uncover as many stones as you can, build great relationships with the parents, and really don't sugarcoat anything in the recruiting process, because it's not like this. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. One of my favorite things to ask players is, on your worst day, imagine your worst day and you still have to want to be here at Texas State, because there's going to be really bad days where you fail to test, coaches on you, your body is so sore, you don't want to go to practice, you know, you might be having relationship problems, but do you want to be up on campus, looking across our beautiful campus, looking down in downtown San Marcos, and say, you know what, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be able to make it to tomorrow, but today's just a rough day. Because with the transfer portal the way it is, you don't want kids bouncing. So keeping it real, doing your research, and if you notice a red flag, just definitely take note and make sure the whole staff knows your red flag you noticed.
Yeah, for us, the character piece is huge. Obviously, culture is, you know, a lot of coaches will say culture is everything, and for us, it is. I think it's important, like Paige said, to do your research and make sure that you are communicating with a lot of people that know the recruit that you're going after. Because there are situations where, you know, okay, this doesn't necessarily match up with our culture, but does this kid need a little bit more guidance? Or are they coming from a place of that's the norm where they're at, but they've had experiences elsewhere where they can get it together and, you know, change their behavior or their character. So it's tough. It's, you know, kind of a sliding scale. Like sometimes you'll hear something that, you know, doesn't resonate and you're like, okay, that sounds bad. For us, we don't necessarily write off that kid right away. That's just an opportunity for us to kind of dive in and learn more about maybe why they're behaving the way they are, or acting the way they are, or saying the things that they are. But bottom line for us, our motto is kind of no shitheads. We read this book called Legacy. It's about the All Blacks, which is arguably the best rugby team. Really awesome book. If you guys get the chance to read it, it's an easy read, and they talk about a lot of really cool things. But yeah, our bottom line is no shitheads. You know, if we think we can help you develop as a person and kind of get rid of some of those things that don't fit our culture, we might take a chance on you. But if we feel like, you know, you're too far gone with that and, you know, we won't be able to help, we're definitely not bringing anyone in that's going to ruin our team culture, no matter how good you are.
I believe I'm up unless you are, Brock. I can go. Well, both of you guys have emphasized relationships between the head coach and your players. And I was wondering if there's like a fine line between if you guys hear about or see, you know, some of your players not upholding the standards of your team, whether that is off field or on the field or in the locker room. Is that something that you report immediately to your head coach, or are you trying to handle that one-on-one with the player to try to resolve that?
I've seen both sides of the spectrum. So I've seen want them to go immediately to you and tell them what's going on and want to be in the know. And then I've seen, you know, a case by case basis and maybe run it through our associate head coach to see if it needed to go to the head coach or not. So I think that you have to know your head coach style and how they operate. And then you also have to use your discretion. But I think definitely that's a head coach feel. And when you are an assistant, I think that is an appropriate question to ask your head coach. You know, if X scenario happens, how do you want to know about it? Do you want it to not know? Do you want it to go through the associate head coach first? Or do you want me to just handle it? Now that may be case by case basis, but I think if you have someone that you can run that through, and you know, Keith is an associate head coach, so he might have a different perspective, but that's how I would handle it currently.
Yeah, I would say it depends on your head coach, because my first job that I had, she needed to know everything. And if she found out, you know, that I knew something that I didn't tell her, it was going to be an issue. I will say sometimes, you know, if you do run into a situation where something comes up and you don't want to go to the head coach, you can either try to step in and handle it, or if it's something that maybe the captains of your team can deal with and manage, you know, it's a conversation that you can bring up to them. But again, it's just the relationship piece. Like, if I have a good enough relationship with my head coach and he trusts that I can manage some of those smaller scenarios, then I'm going to go ahead and manage it myself. But, you know, if he was not confident in that, you know, it might be something that I maybe bring up to him a little bit more often. But again, it goes back to me making sure that my head coach is supported, in the sense that, you know, I don't want him to be blindsided by anything, but I also don't want him to have to worry about things that he really shouldn't have to. So I think there's a lot of variables in that one.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, Sheridan's hopping on, and then AJ and
Yes.
Brock.
My question is, I'm hearing a lot of hearing the word relationship thrown around a lot. So I know, like, with you guys and the things that you do, and also knowing like how my coaches operate, like you really have to have a passion and a different kind of drive to really relate to these kids and these coaches with the job that you're in. So, I mean, either you can answer this question. I want to know, like, kind of like what your why is and behind what you guys do, just to make sure that you're providing the best opportunity and life skills for your players, and also even like your colleagues also.
For me, I think, you know, I was talking to another coach the other day, is that I want to be invited to these kids' weddings, baby showers, when they graduate. Like, I want to be like their person for life. You know, like, it's not just you know, even the kids I've coached the first time at Texas State, at Asheville, currently, like, if they want me involved in their life, like I want to be that. Because again, it's more than basketball for me. Basketball has made the platform for me to serve as an assistant and be a role model in their life. But for me, again, it goes back to the empowerment. Like I want these kids to come in as a freshman or come in as a transfer. And then by the time they leave, I want them to be like, dang, like Texas State women's basketball made me a better person. Like I'm ready for life because of the experiences I had, the coaches I had, the mentors I had here to set me up for life, because I do want to be at those things. That's what I want to do for all the kids that I've coached. If they want me involved in their life after basketball, that's my why. Because I had that as a player, and I think that if you have that as a player, if you've been around great coaches, like I want to be somebody that they remember, like, and leave a legacy, leave a imprint on their life for sure.
Yeah, that was my thing too, is, I've been fortunate to have some really great coaches that have built me up, and really strong relationships with them. And it's created so many opportunities for me. And so I want to make sure that I'm able to provide that to other people if they want to take advantage of that. It's hard in this day and age because with classes and the schedule of lift and practice, and there's a lot going on with our athletes, right? We ask a lot of them. So it can be hard to kind of get to know them on that deeper, more personal level. But one of the things that I like to do is I'll invite some of my kids to come in and watch video. And yes, while we're being productive and watching video, I'll ask them about their life and how things are going. Or I'll even say, hey, you want to come in and get some extra reps? And in their mind, they're probably like, oh yeah, like coach wants me to work on some skills, but that's also my opportunity to check in on them and make sure that they know that I care about them as people, not just as, athletes.
Keith brought up a good point. If you're ever having a problem with a relationship with a player, like ask them to go rebound for them, go get reps with them, go throw the football with them, get in the pool with them, like whatever your sport is, just go meet them where they are. I've always seen that you get really good results if you just spend some time with them,
Thank you.
Good question, Sheridan. All right, AJ, bring us home.
Okay, so what's one thing that you all wish was better or different with the culture of coaching, or that you could improve on? Not individually, but like just as coaches in general.
I wish y'all would make better rules about recruiting that y'all don't complain about later after y'all have already made the rules about recruiting. That's all I'm saying.
I think that if anyone's going to get into athletics, you should know that it is a beast. I think that depending on, it can vary sport to sport, it varies head coach to head coach, but your work-life balance is probably going to be the one thing that may be a deterring factor from working in athletics. And especially, like I said, depending on the head coach that you work for. I've worked for a head coach that is a mom, and then I've worked for a head coach that's not a mom. So there's two different spectrums of work-life balance. If you see a lot of females get out of athletics, I think it's because they struggle with, can they do both? Can they be a mom? Can they be a partner? Can they, take care of what they need to coaching wise? So if I had to change anything, I think for me, it would be work-life balance, because we are, connected to our phones all the time, recruiting, it's a gauntlet. If you really pour in, it can be a marathon for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if this is something that I could necessarily change. But I think one of the scariest things for me is I'm building my life around being a coach, and I'm putting my hands into 18 to 21-year-old athletes. And, nowadays when kids are not happy, they, again, like I talked about earlier, they will challenge, and, things get run up to administration. And I've seen a lot of, great coaches that I've learned from lose their jobs and their livelihood, and it puts their family in really shitty situations just because kids are unhappy. And not saying that all of the situations are not true or whatever it is, but I just think, as the years have gone by, that piece gets a little bit more scary because you see it a little bit more often, and you build those relationships with other coaches and you're communicating with them, and support groups and things like that, and then you see them lose their jobs, and it's devastating. And sometimes I just feel like it comes from a immature place, that being with 18 to 21-year-old people. Like, our full frontal lobes aren't even developed, until we're a little bit older. But it's just, that piece to me is scary. And I don't think, there's anything we can really do to change it, other than, making sure that you're doing a good job managing your team and your program and your relationships.
I think that's a really good question. Oh, go ahead, AJ.
I was just gonna say thank you.
Willie, how old are you? You're a grad transfer from Michigan, so
22.
you're 22. Okay. I mean, we've had a player here at Clemson who's like 25. She was on her 7th year of eligibility. So I do think, hopefully, Keith, that COVID's helping us a little bit in the development of student athletes. But I mean, I do think 2 things, and this kind of came up with John Rittman on our Zoom. He's our softball coach. Is like, I think we need to kind of reframe what happiness means and the things that go into that bucket for athletes, and a happy experience and a positive experience, but also like equipping them better to be change agents. And that creating change doesn't mean immediately going to your head coach's boss and taking their job away, right? Like, there are other ways to create the change we want to see. And I think we could do a better job as someone who works kind of more on the student athlete development side of equipping them with that skill set. So I do think those are like 2 angles to kind of tackle what you're talking about. So, but I think it's still going to be a thing, right? Because every student athlete also still has parents and outside sources and has a vision for themselves. So I'm a fan of the portal. The porteth giveth and the portal taketh away. So it is our reality. So thanks, guys, for being here. Appreciate your time, everyone. I encourage those of you that did not get questions in to tell me to stop asking questions so you have a chance. Remember, the question does impact your grade. Keith, lovely to meet you. If Paige likes you, I like you. And Paige, thanks for helping set this up. Good luck against JMU, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. If you guys need anything, you got our contact information, so please use us as a resource. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
Happy to connect y'all. So just let me know.
See ya.
All right, bye.